A very good afternoon to you. This is Africa Showdown coming to you from Punchline Africa TV. It is 9 minutes past 2 p.m. East African time. My name is Daniel Sean Wesonga, and I believe you are doing great. You are doing okay this particular Sunday, wherever you are. We are coming to you live from the African headquarters here in Nairobi, Kenya. And of course, this is a show where we get to discuss about emerging issues in Africa, leadership, security, and all the other major topics that work towards making the African continent a better continent. And this afternoon, I'm going to be joined by Tarwish Olesasina. But for now, I'm just going to go through the newspaper headlines here in Kenya and in the world at large. And of course, we have a lot that is happening here locally as we wait for the inauguration of a new president just in 48 hours here in Nairobi, Kenya. And therefore, there's a lot that is happening around the streets of Nairobi in regards to that. So I'll just go briefly through the newspaper headlines that here in Nairobi, Kenya. And I'll start with the Standard newspaper. The Sunday Standard today says, enter Ruto's presidency. And of course, after the Supreme Court, that is the apex court here in Kenya, upheld the victory of William Samoei Ruto on 15th of August, he has been given the green light to be sworn on Tuesday, Tuesday on 13th, this coming week, and therefore everything is actually on a high note in that regard. And the Standard newspaper says that the President Kenyatta hands over power to his estranged deputy of 10 years in 48 hours amid mixed expectations in the country that faces economic and governance challenges. What can Kenyans expect? The reign of a man who has beat the odds to win the presidency. And that is the Sunday Standard. You're going to be finding that and many other news in that particular newspaper. And maybe just on the side of that, we also have a story about the former Prime Minister, who is the official opposition leader, Raila Odinga. And the question there is, what next for Raila Odinga? Of course, there has been a lot of speculation whether he's going to continue being the leader of opposition, or maybe he's going to call it a day in the field of politics in as much as Kenya is concerned. So that all is found in today's newspaper, the Standard newspaper, on page 21, 22, and 23. So that is all we have on Standard. So I'll be moving swiftly just to the daily newspaper, the Sunday Nation newspaper, sorry. So, and the headline there is still on matters Kenyan elections, and there is a war in Ruto's camp. That is what the Nation, Sunday Nation says. And apparently it seems that we have some kind of disquiet in the Kenya Kwanza camp among the long-serving allies of the the president-elect William Ruto, and the newcomers, the people who defected immediately after the election. So perhaps we have a standoff there, where the Sunday Nation rather reports that the long-term allies of the deputy of the president-elect Ruto and those who are joining the alliance after the election are locked up in a battle for influence in the incoming government. The old group feels that they deserve more than the newcomers. That will be quite interesting to watch out as it unveils. And also, we have a headline there talking about the handshake for all Azimio except Raila. And of course, it goes there to explain that multiple political handshakes captured on the stairs of President-elect Ruto's official residence in Karen have put paid to the assertion that he will not share power with his rivals, instead sending a signal that the Kenya Kwanza Alliance main version is to reapproachment reapproachment with Odinga, sorry. So that is something quite happening in Karen. And of course, there has been also some speculation in the grapevine that more defections are more bound to happen as time goes by. Sorry. And of course, also in Sunday Nation headline, they're saying that a show of might as Kenya Kwanza set out to fill Kasarani. And this is what we've been, I've read in the first headline that we are waiting in less than 48 hours to have the inauguration of the president-elect, William Samoei Ruto, on Tuesday, the 13th. So that is going to be happening here in Nairobi, Kasarani National Stadium. So I'll move swiftly onto the international newspapers. And of course, currently we are having a lot of discussions about the unfortunate demise of the Queen Elizabeth II in the UK, the United Kingdom. And that is whatever is awash of the international newspapers. And here with me is the Sunday Telegraph, just highlighting there the royal family, that is Prince William and Prince Harry, reuniting after a fallout, a previous fallout, and the headline there reads, "Reunited in sorrow." Maybe Tarwisho Lesasina, what do you make of that? Do you think maybe perhaps now that their father, Prince Charles, has ascended to become the King of England, are we likely to see any dynamic shift in the kind of relationship that we've been, acrimonious relationship that we've been having between Prince Harry and his elder brother, Prince William?
Very well, thank you so much. Of course, Sean Wesonga from our communication head office, and thank you all to our viewers watching this program in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the world. Indeed, just a couple of days ago, we received the shockwaves about the passing on of Queen Elizabeth II, and so many things continue to unfold, of course, following her demise. Including, of course, the takeover, because again, we cannot afford to have any vacuum in as far as leadership is concerned. And at this particular time, I think, responding directly to your question, how do we anticipate the kind of relationship, the frosty relationship that, of course, that has been in the paradise? Are we likely going to see a shift in terms of relationship? Are we going to see maybe this relationship being restored, positively so, to the benefit of the people who look up to of course, the leadership coming from the paradise? And I think, just like you've alluded to, these are some of the things that all of us have been looking forward to, and we want to see how things are going to be done differently, including how Queen Elizabeth II, of course, carried her duties, did her work, and now with the coming in of the prince, what is the new thing that they're going to do in terms of making sure that even the kind of frosty relationship that they've had in the palace or paradise, if I should put it that way, are we going to see a renewed effort in trying to amend, or rather to mend the differences? Are we going to see renewed effort in trying to see maybe some of the lapses and gaps that, of course, Queen Elizabeth oversaw during her tenure in that particular very critical and significant office? So I think these are some of the things that we will be looking for as we continue, even as the nation and the entire world continues to mourn the demise of Queen Elizabeth II. So right to your question, Sean Wesonga, we look forward that maybe through this incident, we are likely going to see that relationship being renewed and restored, and to the benefit of the people of not only of the Britons or England, but to the entire world. Because again, the place that was occupied by Queen Elizabeth II, and the place that, of course, that office really stands in, is very, very pivotal and critical to the affairs of the entire world. And therefore, we expect that there's going to be so much of compromises to make sure that we have, in terms of the activities that are going to be carried out, must be to the benefit of the people who look up to the leadership coming from the palace. So that is it, Sean.
Thank you so much, Tarisho Lesasin. And maybe just the last question in that regard. We've seen in a number of monarchs, more so in the Middle East, when you look at Saudi Arabia, for example, when we had this young prince coming into the throne, Prince Salman, you know, his father, there's a way of things that he does that are not in line of maybe the way the old guard would have wanted to do them. So you realize that there's some sense of modernity in the way the affairs of the kingdom are run. In as much as the UK, Prince Charles is in his 70s, but nonetheless, I believe he's in a different generation with that which the Queen hailed from. Are we more likely to see maybe these radical changes also coming into the United Kingdom monarch?
Not really. We are not anticipating any serious upsets or rather surprises in as far as the leadership is concerned in the kingdom. And particularly so because as the adage goes, a fruit does not fall far from the tree. Mm-hmm. And therefore, for Prince Charles, I don't expect that there's going to be a major paradigm shift from what, of course, the mother, that is Queen Elizabeth II, used to be or really defined or characterize her leadership. So we are not looking forward to a very sharp, of course, shift from that kind of leadership. Albeit, we may have maybe a few things here and there where we may be expecting that Prince Charles will be able to do things probably different from what the mother used to be to do things. Because again, we all acknowledge the fact that these are two different individuals, two different personalities, in as much as they come from the same family unit. But Prince Charles is also a man of his own, and we expect probably he's going to have different approaches in as far as how leadership is going to be carried out. Remember, for Queen Elizabeth II, there's been so much in terms of varied reaction as regards to her leadership, as regards to what she has been able to achieve during her reign as the Queen of England. And therefore, will it quite expect that Prince Charles will want to repeat the mistakes, quote unquote, mistakes of the mother? And probably he will really be so much geared towards making sure that this is the opportunity first to amend what the mother has done negatively, to see into it how they can be able to create so much affection, not only in England, but the entire world. I remember this is a very significant office, like I've said, and therefore it's not an office that the people of England only relying, but it's an office that the entire globe is really relying on. You talk about the Commonwealth, you talk about the rest of the countries in the world, mostly looking forward onto the policy formulation, the origination of policies, and how some of the affairs are being run in the world, especially in very critical organs in the world. And I expect, therefore, that Prince Charles is going to do things not necessarily differently from what the mother used to, but to the extent making sure that there's more of positivity and trying to rectify or amend that which the mother did that maybe was not so much appealing to those that she was leading.
Thank you so much, Tarisho Lesasin. And of course, with that, I move on to the Independent, and we pretty have the same kind of headlines. And the Independent there says, William and Harry come together to mourn Queen. I'll just try and move to another paper, and that is The Nation of Nigeria. And the headlines there is PDP crisis, Wike hits IU again as Makinde slams Atiku. I believe they're headed to the general election, and that actually just paints the scenario. But Taruish, there's a story here which has caught my eye, and I'm just gonna read it. The headline there is Kanu, then Namdi Kanu, the leader of the IPOB, and he has declared there that Tuesday is going to be a seat at home across Southeast. This is a question that has been with Nigeria for quite some years now. the question about giving autonomy to the Igbo people of Biafra. What do you think maybe could bring this kind of stalemate to an end? Because at this particular juncture, a referendum was promised. It has never been delivered by the subsequent regimes. People have been going to the streets to fight for this particular freedom of seceding from the Nigerian federal government of Nigeria. So what would you say maybe perhaps will be the remedy for ending this push and pull between the people of Biafra and the Nigerian government? Because apparently the subsequent governments have not been delivering on the promise to the people of Biafra. So here we are again with this push and pull. What will be your views on that?
Sean, you will appreciate that these are some of the desperate measures or moves that those of contrary opinion or view, in as far as the leadership is concerned in Nigeria, will often undertake to make sure that they put the government of the day in check, and also to pile pressure on the government to make sure that they cede ground or allow some of the very fundamental reforms that must be undertaken, and as far as entrenching democracy in Nigeria is concerned. There's been a lot of concern about the leadership of President Muhammad Buhari and how he's been able to really to govern and run the affairs of that country, including listening into the views of the views of the opponents and those who think probably we need a referendum or a plebiscite for that matter, to see into it what will be the way forward as far as the stalemate between people who are of contrary opinion as far as the leadership of Buhari is concerned. And also, in as far as, of course, responding to the views or the issues, the grievances of the people of Biafra are concerned. You know, this has been a very protracted kind of debate, a protracted kind of course, antagonism between or among the leadership in Nigeria and those who hold on to the view that probably we need a referendum to determine the fate of this particular crisis. This is something that has been there. We've seen so much, so many lives lost, so many, a lot of properties being lost, people being displaced, and so much atrocities being committed on the innocent civilians in Nigeria, and particularly on the Biafrans or the Igbos, if you like. So what will be the best way forward? We've seen conspirators in as far as what is happening in Nigeria is concerned. It is something that is admittedly acceptable because, again, Buhari seems not to listen or see the kind of torture, the kind of atrocities, the kind of injury that is inflicting on the people who are but only asking for what is rightfully theirs. In any case, Sean Wisonga and all the viewers who are watching this program, what will it cost Nigeria, for example, just to admit and accept a referendum to take place so that by the end of the day, the people of Biafra or those who hold a contrary opinion can be able to determine their fate through this referendum? The only reason why we continue to witness the ugly scenes of unnecessary killings, murder, displacements of course, civilians in Nigeria is because President Buhari has not given it an opportunity or a chance for these people to determine their fate through a civilian route, that is through a plebiscite, so that through this referendum, by the end of the day, we'll be able to determine what way forward for Nigeria and the conflict that they have been going through all this long, Sean Wesangwa. So it is something that we all acknowledge and agree that we do not want a situation where the lives or the lives or every other thing is going to be destabilized in Nigeria, or that in as much as there's that level of patriotism, it must be done with an understanding that we do not want to compromise in terms of the human dignity or the loss of more human life because of the push to have this kind of referendum in Nigeria. So I agree, it is a necessary action to take. It's a desperate one for that matter. But again, it's one we must all agree it is the only but the option that remains for President Buhari probably to consider it important to give the people of Nigeria an opportunity to determine their future through this referendum. I submit, Sean Wesonga.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tarwish Olesasin. And of course, you've brought a number of issues to the fore. But I'll just go back maybe to the newspaper, the Nation newspaper of Nigeria again. And on the Nation newspaper, there's a headline there saying that 79,000 insurgents surrender as 3 Chibok girls are rescued. Tarwish Olesasina, you know, this is a subject about the Chibok girls, which has been on the news, on the news headlines for a couple of years. You know, international media. You know, there's even a time where the former U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama started a campaign to bring back our girls. You know, in order to save the more than 200 Chibok girls that were kidnapped by Boko Haram in the northern side of Nigeria years ago. And you remember during his campaign period, you know, what President Muhammadu Buhari promised the people of Nigeria was to eliminate or maybe curb the issue of insecurity within the first 100 days in office. And here we are talking about now a man who is actually towards the tail end of his term, you know, serving the last month of his term. Do you feel that the candidates, we have Bola Tinubu of the All Progressive Congress Party, Atiku Abubakar, who is the main opposition, the PDP party, the People's Democratic Party, and Peter Obi of the Labour Party of Nigeria. Do you believe that any of these men who have mentioned will do, if any one of them was to win the presidency, will they do things any different from how President Muhammadu Buhari has been doing them? Are we more likely to see these same problems about the insecurity in the north, the question of the Biafran and the high cost of living for the people of Nigeria being carried forward to the next regime? Do we really have a solution for the Nigerian people? Darwish? All right, I'll just move on to the next newspaper headline.
Must agree that
okay, just go on, Tarwish.
Thank you. We all agree, Sean Wesong, and of course all the viewers watching this program, and particularly those who come from Nigeria, that President Buhari has not lived up to the expectation of the people of Nigeria. He has not lived up to the promise, the pledge he made to the people of Nigeria when he was campaigning for office. Because I remember the rider was he was going to address the issue of terrorism. He was going to address the issue of the Boko Haram. He was going to address the issue of insecurity in Nigeria, and he was going to address the issue of education, the issue of unemployment, and all those kinds of things, the economy. And so far, if you were to do, say, for example, an audit about President Buhari's performance ever since he came into power, I think he's serving his second term in office this time around. And there's not so much you can take home in as far as what he has been able to achieve, except failures. Because Boko Haram continue to terrorize and maim innocent civilians in Nigeria. Insecurity continues to be a major headache. Education has not gotten any footing. When you talk about unemployment rate, still is very high. When you talk about the cost of living generally, it's not something that is affordable to ordinary people in Nigeria. So in a nutshell, every right-thinking person will conclude that President Buhari has not done as much as it was expected, especially from the electorates and in regards to the pledges and promises he made in the run-up to the election. And that in itself, therefore, remains a major yardstick to determine whether even any coming administration will be able to address this. It will be too early or premature, really, to judge other candidates in this race because, again, they have not had the opportunity to become presidents or to be in the executive, and that only gives them a benefit of doubt. That assuming any of them or in their coalitions they get the emerging winners in the coming elections, maybe they will do a different thing altogether to address some of these setbacks that the people of Nigeria have been facing. Because there are myriad of challenges that the people of Nigeria are really facing. And you will only need a person of competence, a person who has the goodwill, a person who is up to the challenge and a person who is willing to relatively so address the issues that matter to the ordinary people in Nigeria. And this far and to this extent, I do not think that President Buhari has done so much. And it's therefore a very big challenge, even to those who are campaigning for office or campaigning to take over from President Buhari. What is it new are they going to do to make sure that they bring a new hope, a revitalized kind of situation in as far as the affairs of Nigeria is concerned? Are we going to have an individual or a person or bring a completely paradigm shift, which is going to address some of these, if not all, some of the challenges that the people of Nigeria are really facing? So just answering your question, Sean, let's give them a benefit of the doubt. But I highly agree 100% that President Buhari hasn't achieved anything to the benefit of the people of Nigeria, and therefore it is a challenge to anyone who aspires to get into the office that President Buhari occupies at the moment, really to do a different thing altogether, and that which is in the full desire of the people of Nigeria.
All right. It will be indeed interesting to see how the incoming government in 2022 will be able to tackle those and many more other problems that continue to face the people of Nigeria. And of course, let me just move on with speed and to the citizen of Tanzania. We do have their topic that has been ongoing on social media. You know, a lot of people having murmurs about the death of the Queen of England, and the Citizen actually reports there saying why Africa is divided on royal family legacy. And I saw a lot of comments, you know, from here in Kenya and other African countries, you know, about the royal family. People just trying to remember the legacy, both in good terms and in bad terms. And Tarwish, as I know, you know, we have this long-standing relationship with Britain, which is actually coined into what we call today the Commonwealth countries. And of course, we've been always working together in terms of international relations, diplomacy, trade, and many other things in that regard. Would you say maybe in your own opinion that should we concentrate more on maybe the bad things that happened? Of course, we all know about the colonialism that was there back in the day. The slave trade, we know about, you know, the resources being taken from Africa all the way to Europe and all that. But beyond that, we also have our education system today. We also have systems of government, and we continue with a very cordial working partnership years later, decades later, with these with the so-called you know, colonizers. Do you think maybe it is right when there are some section of the African people only maybe illuminate the bad side of it, or maybe we should look at it with a fair, with some level of fair-headedness?
Sean, I agree that we need to view it with a fair-headed kind of approach, because again, it's not only the positive, the negative side that we'll be looking onto in terms of the colonialist or the colonization that Africa has really faced. Because you'll agree with me that there are some of the things really we have benefited in terms of this colonization, in as much as the negative side of this colonization appears to have overshadowed the positive side of it. But we must, by the end of the day, appreciate that there are some good things that came with this colonization, in terms of, for example, you've talked about the issue of education, in terms of the modernization of how we carry out our affairs in the African continent today, and probably even in the rest of the world. And anyone will agree that in as much as we have had so much of the negativity, because of the people who are hell-bent in making sure that the leadership in the African continent today, it does not quite address the issues that matter to the people. And even the colonizers, those who colonized us, left the African continent.
Yes, sorry about that. It seems we lost Tarwish there, but I'll just go on and I'll look at the last newspaper for the day, and that is all to do with the DRC Congo, the security situation there, and that is the Vision, the Sunday Vision of Uganda, and it says DRC okays force deployment and troops on ground to be absorbed into the East African Community joint forces. And of course, this is a conflict that has been also going on for decades, you know, and of course, Congo, more so the eastern part of the country, has been quite a volatile region in the provinces of Goma, Katanga, and the other neighboring regions where rebels have been taking up villages and, you know, causing a lot of mayhem. Tarwish Olesina, Congo just joined the East African Community, and of course, as the Vision, Sunday Vision reports there, that it has accepted joint force deployment. Are we likely to see now things de-escalate in the region? Are we more likely to see rebels being quieted for the very, very first time in Eastern Congo? Are we going to see peace? We seem to have lost Tarisho Lesasina, but I'll just move on and go to the topic of the day. And today we're going to be looking at the African we want. We have a lot of news items which are lined up for the program. But before that, Tarish, are you back on the program? All right, we shall be moving on, and we are looking at the Africa we want, and we shall start with the Equatorial Guinea, where Equatorial Guinea has approved the November election, and Parliament in Equatorial Guinea has approved a move to bring forward the presidential election in November instead of 2023. This means political parties have less than 4 months to prepare. This follows the Congress authorization for the government to merge the presidential election with the legislative and municipal elections. Congress said that this was needed in a context of significant economic constraints. 80-year-old President Teodoro Mbasogo Obiang has ruled the country since 1979 and is constitutionally allowed to run for a 6th term, although he is yet to declare his candidacy. So the political opposition is barely tolerated and severely hampered by the lack of free press, as all broadcast media is either owned outright by the government or controlled by its allies. So this is a country that has been in some kind of a totalitarian regime for more than 4 decades now. So Tarish, maybe in your own anticipation, are we more likely to see maybe a regime change in Equatorial Guinea? Are we able to see a beginning of a new era in terms of a new president other than the sitting president, Teodoro Mbasogo Obiang?
Well, Sean, we may not really look forward to having a new regime as such in as far as Equatorial Guinea politics is concerned, because President Nguema appears to be still determined really to continue leading this nation, in as much, even in the face of so much criticism coming from the civil society organizations and also the opposition parties, not only in Equatorial Guinea, but of course, in the continent of Africa. Because again, President Nguema is one of those, I would say, the long-lasting leaders in power. Save for, after President Paul Biya of Cameroon is the only, I think, is the second longest serving leader that we have had in power. But there's no problem with any leader really serving for any long or even beyond the expectation of the people. The most important thing is that what characterized his leadership during his reign in power. I think that is the most important thing and subject of discussion at this particular time. And of course, even at a time when Equatorial Guinea is preparing to go to yet another election. And something very interesting is that the Nguema-led administration is fit really to amalgamate elections. That is the presidential and, of course, the legislators' elections in, of course, in Equatorial Guinea, unlike what has been the tradition, because normally we've been used to having those elections really scattered. But this time around, they've decided to have it together with the reason that there's not so much of, there's not enough finances to be able to carry out separate exercises. That is the presidential election and the legislative for that matter. But there's more that meets the eye in as far as this, of course, amalgamation or bringing together of this election is concerned. Because again, for the entire period that President Nguema has been in power, we've seen all this happening, elections being done separately, but this time around he's catching, of course, he's caught rather the opponents by surprise by announcing or really leading the reforms through the legislative arms of government to have this election done together. And for that matter, I mean 4 months to the election, and it does not therefore give the opponents an ample time even to prepare to be able to form a formidable force to face President Nguema himself, if he will be in the ballot, or whoever he will be endorsing, the proxy for that matter. Because also my understanding is that he's having a liking of the son to take over from him. But regardless of the outcome, what is important is that let the democratic will of the people of Equatorial Guinea really prevail. Let the will of the people stand, so that by the end of the day, it should be the leaders who the people really want who will be coming into those offices or into power, other than what maybe President Nguema appears to be strategizing behind the scene. Because again, as it is today, Sean and also the viewers, you will acknowledge that President Nguema appears to be playing some cards under the table to make sure that the opponents or the opposition cannot be able to come together and be able to form a formidable force really to face him in this coming election. But also an advice to the opposition in Equatorial Guinea. If they have to win, if there's any chance of them winning, then they have to think about putting their interests aside for the good interests of the people of Equatorial Guinea by making sure that most of the opposition parties, if not all, can come together and form a formidable force to be able to face President Nguema or even the proxy that will be putting into place. Other than that, then you're likely going to have President Nguema or whoever he will be appointing really to have a smooth nominating rather a smooth sailing in this coming election. So these are some of the things that I think the people of Equatorial Guinea are facing. It's not any different from most of the African countries, unfortunately so, because we expect that once you get into power, it's about service to the people, and once your reign or tenure comes to an end, you then have to allow, of course, the leaders that the people want really to take over from you. But that cannot be said. That is not the same with Equatorial Guinea and in as far as the succession politics is concerned. So maybe or maybe not, I want to really, we are going to have a keen look onto the affairs in Equatorial Guinea and see whether President Nguema is going to allow freely the people of that particular country to exercise the democratic right and elect the leaders of their desire without being coerced or intimidated, or without him really micromanaging the direction within which that the outcome of that poll is going to be. It's very unfortunate affairs, but let's hope for the best that the people of Equatorial Guinea can maybe finally speak unanimously and in one voice and send President Nguema home and allow fresh blood, people with fresh ideas to come into place and bring about the new change that they have all along desired. I submit, Sean.
Thank you so much. And of course, you brought to fore a very robust discussion about perhaps the change of guard that is needed in Equatorial Guinea. And when you read through history, you realize that when the current president, Theodore Obiang Nguema, came into power, he actually took power from his uncle, Marcius Nguema, who was perceived as a very, very vicious dictator. And when he came to power, he promised promised that he was going to restore law and order. He was going to form a government that which at the end of the day will work for the common citizen, that is the citizens of Equatorial Guinea, and he was going to fight the deep-rooted corruption that actually pervaded the government of the day during that time. But we've seen the kind of leadership that has come out of President Theodore Obiang Nguema. And just maybe to give our viewers the numbers by World Bank, as per 2022, the poverty rate in Equatorial Guinea stood at 76.80%, just maybe a few percentage higher than South Sudan, Madagascar, and Guinea-Bissau. And this is not just any other ordinary African country, Tawish. This is a country that is rich in oil and other minerals. What would you say, maybe perhaps these scenarios in Africa? We've seen that in Congo, we've seen in many other African countries. Would you say perhaps Equatorial Guinea, just like maybe Congo, Central African Republic, and Nigeria, is more likely to continue to succumb to the curse of resources, because we have oil in Equatorial Guinea, and perhaps that could be the only reason why the seat of presidency has become so lucrative. And you mentioned there that the vice president is the president's son. Would you expect that perhaps this hegemony from this particular maybe family, the Nguemas, is going to end with these elections? Are you optimistic?
Well, it's not about being optimistic or even pessimistic, but the question is, Sean, you will struggle really to understand or even comprehend how a rich nation or a rich continent really continues to lavish in abject poverty. And that's the question that all of us really continue to struggle with, or to get to understand why exactly. You talked about the rich mineral resources, a nation with so much potential in terms of gas exploration, or even oil for that matter, and even land for cultivation. But the people continue to suffer in abject poverty. They do not even have food on table. They cannot be able to fend for their families. They cannot be able really to take their children to school. They're not living a decent life, even a minimalist standard life they cannot be able to afford. And all this has been thanks to the administrations that we have had in place. And fortunately, Sean, the problem also we have in the continent of Africa, and more so in these countries, is that people with so much interest in these sectors, oil and gas industries, or even the rich mineral resources, gold, copper, that most African countries really are endowed with, have taken the advantage and have held leaders hostage. And that is why you see, in most cases, we have had so many of their civil unrest in most of these countries. Because again, the same people or the same countries with interest in these very sectors have had a hand or external hand in seeing that we cannot be stable, we cannot live in unity or in peace, because they know a nation united cannot be defeated, and they know when we are disunited, then we can easily be defeated, or we can easily fall down. And I think they have taken the advantage of that, and that's why you see today, when you go to all these rich countries in terms of the mineral resources, you go to DRC, you go to Central African Republic, see what is happening in Cameroon, see what is happening in Nigeria, and see what is happening today in Equatorial Guinea, Angola, and so many of the African countries, those with the potential really to be able to transform the lives of their people. They cannot be able to do that, because again, they know once these individuals or this population is enlightened enough, they will not be able to continue with the exploitative kind of approaches that they have been engaging, or that they have been undertaking in this country. So to them, it is better that we continue being in the status or in the condition that we are in, so that the status quo remains. The kind of course, exploitation can continue being played out. And it's very, very unfortunate. We want to see these mineral resources. We want to see the riches of these nations, the riches that God granted the African continent and the African people really benefit our people, and not that the Western power countries will be able to come and take away the riches and even to the worst extent, even see into it that atrocities are being committed on innocent civilians, that lives are being lost, people are displaced, that people cannot have peace, that we can continue having civil unrest and wars in this country simply because, not that people do not love one another, not because the African people hate one another so much, but because we've been made to believe, instead of looking onto the external hand in the affair, in what affects us today, we are only but looking onto the immediate neighbor, immediate brother and sister, and by the end of the day, we get into hacking to death. We continue displacing our very own brothers and sisters without really understanding the core origination of all these ills that we are actually facing as a continent of Africa. So yes, I agree. It's time the African people themselves really have to go back to the drawing board. It's time for the Africa renaissance so that the people can be able to take their destiny and their future in their own hands, so that they're able to determine their fate by making sure that by hook or crook, they get the right leaders in place. Because again, when you get the wrong leaders in place, you're likely going to continue facing the same exploitation, the same torture, and getting the undeserved kind of service coming from this leadership. Because again, they're not serving the interests of the locals, but of the international community and the conspirators and those who have interest, of course, in the riches that is in the African continent. Sean.
Thank you so much. And of course, when you talk about the international conspirators and profiteers, one of the international oversight bodies actually listed the United States of America, the USA, as one of the most dominant producer of the Equatorial Guinea's crude oil, through their company ExxonMobil. And that actually really gets you to a point of interrogation, where you ask yourself, by America, a country that actually prides itself in democracy, by having these maybe kind of president in power for all those years, and with all that economic income disparities in the country, but yet it pays billions to this country. Tarwish, isn't it the same scenario that we are seeing in other countries like Uganda? We saw that in the Democratic Republic of Congo during the time of Mobutu. Is it the same thing that we are seeing in Togo, and many other countries in Africa, where the Western powers do not care who you elect as a president, so long as the interests of the same Western powers are well taken care of. And with that, they can say democracy can actually go through the window, and we can focus on mining the resources so long as we keep our man in power.
On the contrary, Sean and the viewers watching this program, indeed, these Western power conspirators are so much keen, and they have so much interest as regards to who gets elected, because again, that is obviously the determining factor as to whether they're going to continue entrenching the very unfriendly policies and the kind of course, leadership that you've seen in the African continent. So to them, they give so much interest and sometimes even effort and resources to make sure that they plant their proxies or leaders who are somehow hell-bent in allowing them to continue entrenching their colonialism, entrenching their kind of dictatorship, and making sure that the resources that are in the African continent do not benefit the people of this great continent of Africa. And when you talk about Togo, for example, and even the countries that you've mentioned, Sean, it goes without mentioning that indeed most of these African countries, if not all, would have made very great strides in as far as development, economically and otherwise. I beg your pardon?
Yeah, okay. I was asking in regards to this kind of leadership structure that we've seen, even in DRC Congo during the time of Mobutu, where we have a totalitarian leader, really defiling the foundation of democracy and the virtues of democracy. But yet again, you realize that the countries that are actually sustaining this leader by doing business, paying billions of dollars in terms of revenues to the minerals or maybe whichever resources that they are mining from the country, keep on entertaining them, the peril of the common citizen. What would you say, is Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, maybe in the same category or maybe in the same line as what we've been seeing in Uganda, we've seen with the other African countries like Togo, we've seen with other African countries like even Nigeria at some point? Would you say maybe the Western powers are more concerned about their resources, whatever they get from Africa, more than the spectacle they sell to us in the name of democracy?
Well, it may be argued that maybe the situation in, say, in Uganda or Equatorial Guinea, or even in Togo, Central African Republic, or other nations in the African continent are not going through a similar, of course, problem or challenges. But you'll agree with me, the script by the conspirators of the external hand is virtually the same, only that how it is being applied and how it's being, of course, how it's being applied, for that matter, is what really matters. They may not apply it the same in Uganda, the same way they will do in Togo or Equatorial Guinea, but by the end of the day, what matters to them is what is the ultimate objective. What is the ultimate goal? Is it about destabilizing that country? Is it making sure that the people of that nation continue to live in that abject poverty? You will not understand, Sean, why a nation with so much resources, you do not quite have, say, for example, proper infrastructure when it comes to education. You don't have proper roads, for that matter. That people continue to go hungry when they have so much at their disposal in terms of the mineral resources, just because there's so much exploitation and there's that external hand which has not allowed even, the potential that is in these respective countries really to be exploited to the benefit of the people. So to the Western power conspirators and Western power countries, they would rather have us continue being in abject poverty. They would rather have us continue being having lack of empowerment. They would rather have us continue being facing the dictatorial tendencies that has characterized most of the leadership in the African continent, away from enlightenment. Because once a generation or a people are enlightened, then you are likely going to continue exploiting them. And once they've realized that this is one of the things that they can continue entrenching in the African countries, then we will never easily see any effort or approach to see into it how our people can be empowered, how our people can be transformed, how the resources can be used. Getting education, in terms of improving our economy, in terms of improving our infrastructure. Today you move around these countries and you wonder, how come a nation with so much or full potential and with so much resources still lags behind when it comes to the issue of roads, for example? How comes we have very poor infrastructure even in our schools today? How comes that we are going hungry today in a continent that is full potential and resources? It all boils down to poor leadership, and a leadership which has been held hostage by the Western power conspirators, until when the population and the continent realizes that the only freedom will come with the ordinary people and will come with the African, probably a change in the African continent. But if we continue, of course, if we continue really being subjects of the dictators that have been planted among us, we'll never realize any potential and never realize a better future, not only for our children, but even for our children's children. So this is the time we need to reawaken ourselves. It is the time we need to challenge ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it anew bring about the change that our people desire, to bring about a change that even our future generations will be able to read and see and have a feel that there's something we lived for, other than just succumbing to the pressures, succumbing into the hostages of the Western imperialists. So this is the time that we are asking ourselves and posing this very challenge, a big challenge to ourselves, that it is time we need to live beyond our comfort zone if we are to be able to realize the true meaning of life, and that which even the future generation will be proud of what we lived for.
Fantastic there at Ritual Assassin. And of course, that gets us into our next topic of discussion this particular afternoon on African Showdown, where we are looking at what Africa do we want? The Africa we want. And of course, the EU has announced cash support for Mozambique terrorism fight, and the European Union has announced that it is providing additional support to the African military mission in Mozambique in form of $15 million. That translates to around 13 million euros, which will go toward the South African Development Community SADC mission to Mozambique. The EU says that the money will go towards peace building and will focus on capacity building of police and correctional services officer, women and youth empowerment, and dialogue with civic leaders tailored towards good governance and the rule of law. The EU said with this money it will join the Mozambican and international efforts to restore peace, safety, security in the northern Mozambique region. In concrete terms, this means that the SAMIM will receive camp fortifications and storage containers, medical equipment, vehicles, boats, as well as technological devices. And that, of course, reminds us that since 2017, northern Mozambique's gas-rich Cabo Delgado region has been plagued by armed violence, with some attacks claimed by the Islamic State extremists. Now, Tarwish Olesasina, if we have to come back to you, we've been talking about how the African continent rather succumbs in most scenarios to the Western imperialists. Do you think that these donation by the EU in order to fight terror in Mozambique, is it a genuine initiative, or maybe they should have focused on solving the core of the problem, which is the countries that are actually spewing up this war, the countries that are fueling this war in northern Mozambique? Because remember, the Islamic State and Al-Shabaab are some of the militias which are actually fighting in Mozambique. How did they find themselves in Mozambique, first of all?
Sean, you're asking whether really this is a genuine initiative or a genuine move by the Western power countries. We should be asking ourselves a question. How come that we find ourselves where we are today in the first place? Because again, if these Western power countries were so much keen or interested in making sure that this kind of unrest or conflicts can be brought to zero, then they would have engaged the primary initiatives to make sure that this happens not to occur in the first place. It's just like saying you waiting to bring about relief food to a nation or to a people that you have the opportunity really to empower them in terms of cultivation and making sure that they have enough food at their disposal. Why would we wait until when we are suffering from hunger, when we are poverty stricken, when we do not have anything to drink or eat, is when we now want to bring this relief food or to bring this aid to the African people? I think there's a new approach. There are approaches that we can be able to engage in terms of making sure that we empower our people. If you talk about hunger, for example, in the African continent, I mean, the African continent is one of those regions in the world or places in the world that are highly blessed. And because the land is arable, you have a very favorable climate, and you have a very, you have enough personnel or manpower, really, in terms of labor, to be able to undertake, say, for example, farming or cultivation. But why are we not engaging these particular groups, those initial or primary, when we are suffering from hunger, until when we do not have food on table, is when we now want to bring billions of shillings or billions of dollars in the name of course, donations. I think this is just but hypocritical and trying to make us to continue being, to be subordinates of the Western power conspirators, because again, they know very well that once we are empowered, once we have food, once we have proper infrastructure, once our children go to school and all these things are addressed, then we will not have anything to rely on them. So to them, it remains beneficial if the status quo remains, if we continue being in the situations we are in. So when you talk about the kind of relief or the kind of donations that these Western power countries are giving to the African continent, it is more of trying to continue blinding us, continue to make us live in the comfort zone. That by the end of the day, even if you're not going to get food, even if you're not going to have proper schools, if you're not going to have proper roads or such kind of things, then the Western power countries will come and donate to us or help us in that matter. They say it's better a person who teaches you or shows you how to fish than a person who gives you the fish itself. And I believe Shonwe Sama yourself, being a person who comes from the lake region, can quite be able to associate with that, of course, adage. And when you get to people who want to continue giving you what I would want not to say donation, but it's more of a handle, so that you're not empowered, so that you're not enlightened outside the box, so that you come out of your comfort zone and be able to do a different thing altogether, and to be able to bring a paradigm shift and a change that will be able to, of course, to redefine the future of our nation or even of our continent. Then those are people who are hell-bent in making sure that we continue being in the same situation we are, we continue being in the same spot we are people who are not going to get off our comfort zones. We continue to rely on them, and in that in itself, therefore, we are not able really to come out of the control or the micromanagement that we have been destined by the Western power countries. So it is important that the African people really wake up to the reality and be able to understand that all these donations and all these aids are not well meant for their improvement, for the improvement of their life or their livelihoods, or even to improve the livelihood of the future generation, but to continue to have a stronghold on the African continent and the African people, so that they cannot think outside the box, but only rely on the Western power countries and the donations that come with them. This in itself is not something that is sustainable. It's something that is short-lived. It's something that is only but intended to achieve the short-term goals, but not a permanent solution. This is a time we need to challenge ourselves and ask, what is it that we can be able to do to bring about a permanent solution to the so many challenges that we face as a continent? Is there a new thing that we can be able to do to be able to address and bring about these solutions, if not relying on the foreign donations and foreign aid to be able to address our immediate challenges? I think, Sean, the reality. Today in the African continent, you have most educated people, you have the right personnel, you have people who, you will say, have the right and correct attitude and the mindset to be able to do a very big difference in the continent of Africa. But that can only be achieved when we know that we do not have any support, but the only support comes from our giving our all and being very constructive and giving all the efforts in making sure that we change the world, and particularly the continent that we live in as a people of the African continent.
Well put there at Arwisho Lesasina, saying that you'd rather teach the African people how to fish rather than giving fish to them. Quite relatable there. And that moves us to our third topic, and that is all to do with the Sahel region, where a UN official has raised concern that the Sahel region crisis is becoming forgotten. A senior UN official is warning Africa's volatile Sahel region risks becoming a forgotten crisis because of the many competing emergencies around the world. The head of the regional office for West and Central Africa for the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Charles Banimlon, expressed his concerns in an interview with the media last week. He noted that millions of people in 6 Sahel countries, that is Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria, need international support to survive. The official based in Dakar, Senegal, told the media he drummed his message home in meetings with donor countries in Geneva. He said 18.6 million people face acute hunger and many on the brink of starvation. He said 7.7 million children under the age of 5 are malnourished, including nearly 2 million who are severely malnourished and risk dying without prompt treatment. And Tarwish, you know, we're just from talking about Cabo Delgado, but clearly one thing that comes out in all this discussion is that at Cabo Delgado, what we have there is the natural gas, something that could be of economic, beneficial value to both Mozambique and even the Western powers. But would you maybe argue and say the reason why the Sahel region is getting forgotten is because we don't have a concentration of minerals there, perhaps?
Well, I think generally the issue is, the Western power countries cannot give so much attention or even resources in terms of aid of foreign donations to nations or countries that they think are not going to have any. They're not going to have any return on investment, if I should put it that way.
Right.
And therefore, when you talk about, of course, the gas exploration and other resources in the African continent, and more so in this country that you've just alluded to, there cannot be so much effort coming from the foreign donor or even from the Western power countries if there's nothing they feel they're going to get out of it all. And they will only but put so much interest in nations and in a people that they think they're going to have so much benefit out of it. Say, for example, is it Gabon or where? Is it Gabon or DRC Congo, where we have so much production of cocoa? I mean, you've seen a lot of resources being poured to this country, and not because the Western power countries or France, for that matter, feels like they need to empower this particular generation or to empower the population in this country, but because they know the cocoa production which is beneficial to them. You can imagine we cannot be able even to have the valuation of the cocoa itself. It has to go to these Western power countries to be produced, and it's still being sold to us. And that in itself really speaks volume about how we have been able to relegate our responsibility and relegate our duty and relegate the things that really matter to us to another party. And in this case, the Western power countries. It is time, I think, even if it's about doing a very thorough study or an understanding of how we can be able to explore or to have an exploration of the mineral resources that the African countries have been endowed with. We can be able to really explore these resources, these resources to the benefit of our people, and not continually rely on the foreign donations and foreign donors to be able to do this. Yet by the end of the day, there's not so much we are benefiting. In any case, because we've seen the kind of unrest, the kind of course, fightings that we have had in most of these countries have been but necessitated by external forces, those who think like if the African people or this particular country is united or they do not have any issues amongst themselves, then they are able to think in the right direction, to think together and be able to exploit even these resources. But when we are divided, it's easier for them to do it and succeed for the benefit of their people. So it is not something that we are taking, we are having a pride on, because it is not possible that you can have a nation or a continent that has resources that cannot benefit our people, but yet another continent or even another nation outside the African continent. That is something that must be brought to an end, but it can only be brought to an end when we have people who have made up their minds, people with a resilient heart, people who are willing to bring about the change. And that change begins with an ordinary people and ordinary mwananchi, and making the same when it comes to the leadership. When you get the right people in the leadership position, then you are able to see even these resources being beneficial to the people of those respective countries.
Quite valid points there from Tarisho Lesasina from Narok. And of course, your argument, and your insights on how Africa can be able to benefit from the resources that we have here was of having a proper leadership. And we've seen countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, the decorated Asian tigers, setting up structural, foundations in their systems of government just to ensure that we have frugality in leadership, we have integrity. And when you read about the history of Singapore, you realize that corruption was one of the vices that actually the leadership of the day during the independence years in 1969 actually vowed to combat. And there is an infamous quote by the former Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, which says that if you really want to fight corruption, just start by arresting 2 or 3 of your friends and put them in jail, and the rest will actually fall into place. Quite interesting. But today in the news, the former Ghana president blames economic woes on corruption, and Ghana's former president John Mahama has blamed the country's economic woes on corruption, mismanagement of COVID-19 funds, excessive borrowing, and the fight and the high cost of banking reforms, among other factors. He was reacting to comments by IMF managing director Kristalina Georgieva, who attributed the country's economic challenges to the global pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The government of President Nana Akufo-Addo has said the crisis is due to external factors. Ghana's economy has been struggling of late with inflation over 30%, and the government is currently holding talks with the IMF to secure a 3-year bailout program worth $3 billion. Now, Tarwish, you've just actually articulated whatever that perhaps has set a momentum for this kind of discussion. And you've said that the African people need to elect leaders that are very, very much alive to their problems and the issues that they face. And top amongst them is actually corruption. Will you say, and this is a former president actually giving a prescription of the remedies to the problem Ghana faces, will you say maybe in their term, in his term as a president, he failed in that he did not put up proper structures to be able to curb the vice of corruption? Because we saw in countries like Singapore, countries like Malaysia, and many other Asian tigers, what they did first was to set up a proper structure that will be able to curtail, corruption from the system. Would you say that on his side, President Mahama, former President John Mahama, failed as a leader? All right, we seem to have lost Arwisho Lesasina, and in that I'll be just moving to the other news of the day, and of course the last topic of the day, which is on Nigeria's security situation. And armed men released dozens of worshippers kidnapped in northwest Nigeria, and the Nigerian police say the 43 people who were abducted from a mosque in northwestern Zamfara state have been released, while one died in captivity after being tortured. Police say that they are still searching for armed men responsible who disguised themselves as fellow worshippers when they invaded the mosque last week during Friday prayers. Zamfara State Police spokesman Mohammed Shehu confirmed to the media in a phone call Thursday that the release of the abductors had happened. He said the police authorities have deployed officers around the state to prevent more attacks from taking place. Shehu said did not comment though on whatever ransom was paid to secure the release or the release of the abductees. The worshippers were kidnapped on September the 2nd as they gathered for the weekly Jumat prayer at the village of Zugu. So that is all that has been in the news items in regards to the African continent. And remember, the show today has been all about the Africa we want. We have had a very robust discussion there, measuring from Equatorial Guinea, Mozambique, Nigeria, and of course Ghana. And that marks the end of our topic today. And remember, tomorrow we shall be coming back to you with more news here locally in Kenya, East Africa, and the rest of the African continent. And of course, whatever will be happening in the UK, we shall be keeping you abreast on that as well. It is exactly 21 minutes past 3 p.m. East African time, a time to call it a day for this particular afternoon. God bless you. Have a good one, and join us tomorrow for our normal programs.